Everybody, welcome to our webinar. My name is Sam Hill. I'm a team leader at the Rocket Company. You are arriving into our web room, as we like to say, in today's technological world. You're going to be filing in, as it were, for a 45-minute to 1-hour training on how to beat your church budget, how to beat it, not just meet it, but actually go beyond it, have more money for ministry. So you're in the right place. Again, my name is Sam Hill. I'm a team leader with the Rocket Company. I want to welcome you. As you are coming in to today's training, I want you to identify where the text box is, kind of a chat room sort of feature, and I want you to just tell us who you are and where you're from. You should find the chat feature. We've got Haley, we've got Kelly on hand with us today running the chat room. Just tell us who you are, where you're tuning in from. We have people from all over the world that join our trainings, and we're so excited that you're here. Thank you for taking a few minutes of your valuable time. Find the chat box, tell us who you are, where you're tuning in from, and then as we go today through our training, if you have a question about the content, you have a question about how to increase giving at your church, question about anything related to church finances, all that good stuff, the chat box is where you're going to put it in. I see Alex, Mike, Richard, welcome everybody. Orchard Park, New York, Roswell, Georgia, go Dogs, Jacksonville, Florence, South Carolina, Gary from Tennessee. It's like an SEC event all of a sudden. Here we go. Lubbock, Texas, Camden, Arkansas, it looks like, Jacksonville. We are excited. Frank, Phyllis, welcome everybody. Listen, as you're coming in, you've arrived in the right place. My name's Sam Hill. I'm a team leader with the Rocket Company. And we're going to talk today about 3 secrets to beating your church budget year after year. Not just meeting it, but actually going beyond it and putting systems in place that will allow you to exceed, go beyond church budget, not just this year, but year after year after year. So that's the goal for today. We're excited that you're here. Rob is here, Catherine. We even know that some teams kind of tune in together, which is fantastic. If your team's here, we just want to welcome you. Again, my name's Sam Hill. I'm a team leader with the Rocket Company. You're in the right place today if you want to learn how to beat your church budget, if you want to learn how to get more total dollars coming in to your ministry, to your church, and also make those dollars sustainable, meaning once they all come in, you get more total giving. How do you actually sustain that, keep that going? And so we're going to cover all of that today. I'm very excited to present this to you. We're going to begin our training in about 2-3 minutes. We'll give just a few more minutes here for people to join. We've got over 400 church leaders today that are registered for this training, which is fantastic. So we know that church leaders want to beat their church budget, right? That's not news to anybody. So we're going to tell you how to do that today. John is here. Harry is here. Kenny, Lawrence, Marta, Hezekiah, Joel, welcome. All over the country, all over the world. Fantastic. As you're coming in, please introduce yourself in the chat box there. Tell us who you are, where you're tuning in from. Also, we've got a church leader here from Rwanda, just came in. Welcome. Welcome to our training today from Rwanda. Familiarize yourself with the chat box because that's where we're going to be able to answer questions today. So I'm going to do Q&A, what we call the hot seat. So any questions you have about the content, the training that I'm going to bring, any questions you have about giving, church finances, all that good stuff, you can put it in the chat box. We'll answer as many questions as we can about 3/4 the way through our training today, and then also at the very end. So we are excited for you to be here. I see Bill, I see Ronald, Ashley, Ingrid. We're going to begin our training in approximately 1 minute. And I'm going to just challenge you to set everything aside if you can. I know how busy we are. I've got my email open in another window. I'm going to go ahead and close it myself. And cell phones, airplane mode, all that good stuff. Try to focus, okay? We know from interacting with over 10,000 churches that have been through our modules over the past decade that churches need more money. And so we're going to talk to you about that today. It's crucial to helping you do the ministry dreams that you have, go beyond them, carry them on year after year. So today I want you to get out something to take notes if you can. We've got slides that we're going to share with you today. Just so I'm clear, not everything is going to be on the slides. But I tune in, pay attention, take notes, ask questions in the chat box if you have those questions. We're going to begin in here in just about 30 seconds. Want to welcome you in if you're just coming in. We're about to start. You've arrived in the right place. My name is Sam Hill. I'm a team leader at the Rocket Company. We're going to talk today about 3 secrets to beating your church budget year after year after year. And I'm going to share those with you today. I'm excited, some things that I've learned over the years, some things that the Rocket Company has learned serving over 10,000 churches now for a decade. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn off my camera and I'm going to share a presentation. And Haley, if you just want to let me know when everybody can see that, so I know that people can see okay. Can you see that? All right, Haley? All right, great. 3 secrets to beating your church budget year after year. Okay, let's talk about this because here's the thing. Every church wants to beat their church budget, but every church is used to, for the most part, fundraising, right? They're used to desperation mode. They're used to raise a bunch of money, then you spend all your money. They're used to more programs, right? Gimmicks, what I call silver bullets as a way to grow your church budget, meet budget. We're going to talk about going beyond your budget. You know, the Rocket Company, serving over 10,000 churches for a decade, we've looked at different studies, we've done our own polls of churches, and not a lot of churches beat their budget, right? Most churches barely make their budget, and if you took away year-end offerings, there's not a lot of churches that would even make their budget, right? And what we want to do is get you out of fundraising mode, and that's not a knock on fundraising. Everybody has to do it from time to time. Every church has capital needs, capital expenses, but what we want to do today, my goal, is to help you have a financial culture by design, not by default, meaning if you don't have financial systems in place, you don't have a financial culture in place as a leader in your church, and you don't, by design, put one into place, it's not going to happen, right? We are prone to survival mode when it comes to organizational finances. We're prone to survive when it comes to church finances. We are not naturally inclined to put a financial process in place. When church leaders go to seminary, they don't do extensive courses on building budgets, running finances, building finance teams, meeting budget, how to deal with shortfalls, and on and on. There's just not a whole lot of that covered, okay? And so what we're going to talk about, and the goal for today is for you to leave and feel like, hey, I have a system I can put in place. I have some principles that will allow me to have a financial culture, a financial plan by design, because it's definitely not going to happen just by default. And if you stay to the end today, we're going to do a few things. Number one, I'm going to be in the Q&A hot seat twice, about 3/4 of the way through the presentation at the very end. And then I'm also going to give you the number 1 way to get more money this Sunday. Here's what makes this different. You need money to do ministry, okay? Church leaders can sometimes struggle, and boards can struggle, and money can be awkward, right? Put a 1 in the chat box if money can be awkward or has been awkward at your end. I don't want to talk about money. I mean awkward as in you don't want to ask the board for more money. I mean awkward as in you're like, what's the next giving talk I'm going to do? How do I stand up and ask for money without making it seem like I'm asking for money, right? What makes this different is we're going to try to get away from run and gun, Wild West, you're not really sure how to talk about. We're going to get away from that today. We're going to talk about clear principles, okay? Clear principles to beat your church budget year after year without running and gunning, without Wild West mentality. So that's what makes this different. This is about not just about talking about the fact that you all need money. We all know that. This is about how do you actually get it, how do you actually sustain it. Most training on church finances focus on programs, not processes. Okay, write that down if you're taking notes. Most of the time when we think about our church finances, we think about programs, not processes. Today will be different. I'm going to be all process-oriented, meaning if you have a sustainable church finance process in place and you execute that process over time, you will not just meet your budget, you will go beyond your budget, and you'll go beyond your budget year after year after year. So today, you're not going to get a program, you're not going to get a campaign, you're not going to get the latest, greatest fundraising technique, you're going to get financial processes that you can use and apply to your church leadership, your church body, your church budget, and your church mission as you move ahead. I just want to introduce myself again. My name is Sam Hill. I'm a Rocket Company team leader, local church leadership for 2 decades. I'm a public speaking financial consultant. I'm passionate about helping pastors enjoy ministry. Most pastors, not most, but a lot that we interact with, they're surviving in ministry. And when it comes to finances, we want to get you out of survival mode and into thriving mode. And that's one of the great passions that I have. You can see my wife, my 2 kids, and my dog. And college football is officially 7 days away. So put a 1 in the chat box if you are excited that college football is coming around the corner here. I am a UGA fan, but I live in Louisville, so I'm also a Cardinal fan. When it comes to church finances, I've done a lot of things right, but I've also done a lot of things wrong when it comes to church financial leadership. And today my goal is to help you learn from where I've stumbled. My goal is to help you learn from things that where I've just kind of blown it. And you can say, hey, I don't want to do that, what he did. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Because after just surviving in church financial mode for years, I learned a couple of things. Number one, it leads to burnout, frustration, confusion. We can over-spiritualize generosity and church finances all we want, but the bottom line is that when you're stressed about money as a church leader, it leads to burnout, fatigue, frustration. People are confused. It also can rob your people of the opportunity to move from spectators to participants when it comes to their giving, puts tension on the church budget, puts tension into the church financial meetings, and when those meetings are tense, it's really hard to be effective, right? Put a 1 in the chat box if you've ever had a tense financial meeting, right? When you have a tense financial meeting, are you able to focus on the mission, on moving ahead? And I also discovered going in survival mode for a long time on church finances that it keeps you from having more money to help more people. And ultimately, all these ministry dreams that we have, money to achieve, right? Like I said, you can over-spiritualize it till we're blue in the face, but the bottom line is all of the missions, the overarching mission, the individual missions, whether it's world missions, whether it's an after-school program right there in your backyard, whatever it is, it takes money for it to happen, okay? And so for years and years and years, I discovered the hard way that surviving when it comes to church financial mode, fundraising mode, over and over and over and over is very, very difficult. The hard way when it comes to church finances, relying on programs alone. Okay, programs alone can actually isolate people from whole life stewardship, something to really think about. The hard way when it comes to just financial survival mode is asking people for money. I always joke at Christmas and when you're desperate. Okay, that's the 2 most common times where church leaders ask for money. They ask for it year end because they got to make up their budget. They know people might be in a generous mode, tax write-offs, and on and on and on. And when they're desperate, typically middle of the summer. Those are the 2 most common places that church leaders ask for money. That's the hard way, just so we're clear. That's the hard way. Making up budget at the end of the year makes for a really stressful 12 months leading up to that moment. It would be great to beat the budget in the summer. Who would like to beat their budget in the middle of the summer, right? The hard way is not talking about money because it's awkward. The hard way is saving and cutting budget to quote-unquote get ahead. That's the hard way. And a lot of churches live there. We want to get you out of that today. And my question for you is, do you want the easier way? The easier way that's less awkward, it's more predictable, right? Because survival mode, Wild West run-and-gun mentality is actually entirely unpredictable, and lack of predictability means lack of stability, and lack of stability means you're totally stressed and anxious all the time, and you're not enjoying ministry, not thriving in ministry. So if you want an easier way that's less awkward, more predictable, and also will result, crazy enough, right, in more total dollars coming in. That's the crazy thing when you're in survival mode. But when you have a church financial system in place, you actually will find you have more total dollars coming in. Over the past decade, the Rocket Company has helped 10,000 plus churches increase total giving, so more total dollars coming in year over year, and we've helped a lot of churches establish significant recurring donations, so they actually know next month and the month after and the month after and 12 months down the road, they know a certain portion of donations are coming in. And we didn't do that by giving them just another campaign or another program to run. But here's my disclaimer, okay? My disclaimer for today is that results are not typical. And what do you mean, what results, Sam? Results, I mean more total dollars coming in and significant recurring donations. Those results are not typical unless you are willing to change your mindset about donations, about giving. Mindsets that you need to change, we're going to talk about some of them today, one of which is this kind of let's retract, let's cut, let's save. You've got to get rid of that mindset, and I'm not a downer on saving. I'll explain what I mean. You've got to be willing to change your actions, meaning if you recognize that it takes money to do ministry, it takes more money to do more ministry, then you need to actually change your actions as a church, as leaders, so that you can get more money for more ministry. You can't just talk about it, you actually have to do it. You have to adopt a system, and so that you actually are following a plan, and then you have to actually stick with it, right? Beyond 30 days, beyond 60 days, you have to stick with it for quite some time. So that's my disclaimer, right? Because there are no silver bullets, and finances they're hard. It's a sensitive subject. So if you want more total dollars coming in, you want a significant amount of recurring donations, and you want to beat budget year after year after year. You got to change some things that you're thinking. You got to change actions, and you got to actually follow a system. Now, what I'm going to give you right now, if you're taking notes, focus in, dial in here, are what I call the 3 secrets to actually beating your church budget year after year after year. And they are these. Secret number 1, what I call the 5S, as in Sam, the 5S strategy. Secret number 2, the 5C, implementation. And then number 3, the 5P, future. Okay? You got to have a strategy, you got to implement the strategy, and you got to have a future. You have to actually be able to sustain it over time. Let's cover these one at a time. How do you beat church budget year after year after year? Number 1, you've got to focus on what I call the 5S strategy. What does the S stand for? The S stands for seasonal strategy. Seasonal strategy. Most churches kind of have one of 2 extremes, okay? One extreme is let's ask for money only when we don't have it, which is one extreme, okay, which results in survival mode. And the other extreme is where you try to build out a 12, 18, 24, 3-year, 5-year financial plan, and because you try to tackle too much larger, you get this huge ground you're trying to cover, the net result is nothing ever happens, right? Because you're biting off more than you can handle. What you need is we are people of seasons, and God himself, even in the Word, is a God of seasons. And so what do I mean by a seasonal financial strategy? Well, I mean literally breaking up into 5 seasons of the year, a way to talk about finances with your people, a way to gather donations. 5 seasons: fall, winter, holiday, spring, and summer. That is a seasonal strategy. So instead of only asking for money when you need it, right, which is one extreme, and instead of only focusing on a 12, 18, 24, 36-month plan, which is totally overwhelming, and there's very few organizations that can execute on something like that, you're just going to focus on seasons. And you're going to focus on fall, winter, holiday, spring, summer as your 5 seasons. And here's why, okay? Your people, all of us, we live our lives in seasons. We're in one right now. We are entering into the fall season. What does the fall season mean? It means kids are back. It means that college football is coming on, so our weekends change, right? With every season that we come into as people, as organizations, as communities, it impacts our lives. It impacts the way we spend our time. It impacts the way our weeks are structured. Seasons mean the calendar is impacted. Seasons mean that your finances are impacted, right? When do people incur more financial stress than other times in the year? Well, how about holiday seasons? How about Christmas, right? There's a lot of expenses at Christmas typically for the average family. They're heading to the new year. Taxes are on their mind, right? So each season means that your people have different things going on in their lives. So my point in saying that is that when you focus on a seasonal strategy as a church, you're going to be playing into the habits of your people. In other words, when you, your church, model your financial communication strategy or your financial strategy after these seasons, it's going to feel really normal for all of your people because they themselves in their own lives are adapting season by season by season. In addition to seasonal implications to everybody's life, you're also, as a church, as an organization, there are seasonal things that come into play as a church. So you might have particular fall ministries. You might have summer ministries. You might have an after-school program in the fall, a summer mission trip. You're launching a missionary family at some point during the year. Even the church as an organization, the church itself also changes season by season, meaning there's different missions, there's different things that are happening in the life of the church season by season. It's not the same every single month, every single season. There are different things happening. And so when you have a seasonal financial strategy, not only are you going to be playing naturally into the habits of your people, you're also going to be playing naturally into the habits of your church. So you want to get out of the two extremes, which is you have this elaborate financial plan that is, there's very, very little hope that you're going to actually fulfill it. And then the other extreme is you're shooting from the hip, Wild West, run and gun, and you're going to focus on communicating by season. Now, what do I mean by that? What would it look like to communicate seasonally about money? What do I actually mean? Well, let's get practical. I mean that when you actually communicate with your people about the fact that you need money as a church, your giving talks at the offering plate, your regular communications, and we'll talk about some of this as well in a minute, through email or letter, whatever it is, it means that you communicate to your people about finances in reference to the season. I'm going to say that again. You communicate to your people in reference to the season. So here's what I mean. When churches tell us, well, it's really awkward to talk about money. Well, it's awkward to talk about money if you're just talking about money and you don't have it tied to any mission, to any call, to any goal. But it's not awkward to talk about money when you say, hey, Redeemer Church, we have our after-school program that launches on September 15th. It's an 8-week program, and your tithes and offerings, this is one example this fall of where your tithes and offerings are going to be used to impact our broader mission, which is reaching the city of Atlanta with the gospel. Also in the fall, we're going to be doing this, and we're going to be doing this. And so not only are you giving your people a vision for ways that they can participate in ministry, but you're telling them that your money, we don't just need money for money's sake. We're not asking for your money so we can pay the bills and move on. We're specifically asking for your money for the very important ministry missions and engagements that we have. And here's the thing. Assuming your people are volunteering for all these different ministries, whatever it is, then they're going to go, oh yeah, I'm a part of the after-school program. I'm a part of that mission. I'm a part of the mission trip, right? This winter or whatever you're referencing, whatever season you're in. And so your people they're already with their time engaged. And so when you ask for their money tied to the mission, it makes total sense. And it takes the awkwardness out of it. So very, very effective way to build a financial strategy, focusing on it by season. The surviving church has a financial strategy that's all over the map. They've tried focusing on a 36-month plan to greatness and all this kind of stuff. They didn't get anything done, so now they just survive. They're just, man, we don't have enough money. Let's make sure we ask for a little bit more explicitly this coming week. Hey, let's send out another letter down the road. You're just surviving. There's no plan. You're not following any type of regimen, any type of diet, any type of communication, calendar-oriented method to talk to your people about money. You're in survival mode. The thriving church, financially speaking, is a church that is communicating to their people tied to specific missions, specific things that the church is trying to accomplish. And the thriving church is on a seasonal basis casting vision for their people and casting vision also for the leadership. Another great benefit of communicating via season and not 1 year at a time or just desperation mode, but when you communicate with a seasonal strategy, it also helps leadership, your financial board, your elders, your deacons, and everybody. It helps them also know where they are, right? And it helps take the tension off of budget meetings and financial meetings, because you're not just sitting there hoping that somebody has some type of a plan. Everybody knows it's the fall season. Here's the things that we're focused on. Here's what we're going to communicate to our people. This is where our money is going. And when you focus in smaller chunks, such as 5 seasons, you will accomplish a lot more in the long run. So that is 100% what a thriving church looks like. Now, let's talk about implementation, okay? A 5C implementation. That's the second secret. Well, if you're going to communicate to your people via season, you have to have 5 different types of communication, or I'll just call them 5 channels. 5 channels of communication. That's what the 5 C's are. Meaning, most churches only communicate to donors from up front. Put a 1 in the chat box if you're communicating to donors on a regular basis through more than one channel. A channel is something like email. Another channel, direct mail, like a letter, snail mail, right? Another channel, audio visual. Another channel, a testimony from up front. Maybe somebody from a parent from the after-school program, right, to use that illustration. Testimonial of how the finances are being used. Most churches, when we look at their communication strategy, a lot of them only talk about money from up front, whether it's a giving plate talk, whether it's a yearly sermon, whether it's Christmas Eve, whatever, up front. There's a few other churches that will maybe send out a letter once a year, twice a year. When I say regular communication, I mean, let's just say at a minimum, you're utilizing one of the other channels at least once a quarter, preferably pretty much every 4 to 6 weeks. Most churches, if they use any other channels at all besides up front, it is just very, very sparse. And here's the problem. If you only communicate from up front, you're missing 70+% of your people, right? Because not everybody engages in communication the same way. So when you do a giving plate talk, you assume that every single person present is listening, engaged, following, and going to respond that way. That's not the way it works. That's not the way it works from a communication perspective. It's not the way it works from a personality perspective, right? There are some people who respond better via written form, like email. So I'll give you a couple channels that you need to be communicating to your donors through. You definitely need to be communicating from up front, no doubt. Up front meaning a sermon and or a giving talk, etc. You also, give you a second channel, need to communicate through email and or texts, right? So through channels of technology, which people basically live their whole lives through email and text right now, okay? So that's when I say if you're only talking about money from up front, you're missing probably 70% of your people because we're all using our phones and our email for everything in our lives. So that's why you've got to use these channels. Here's another channel, direct mail, right? Sending a letter through snail mail. Powerful today as it's ever been because our inboxes are filled, but our actual mailboxes are not quite as filled typically these days. Here's another channel, audio-visual. What do I mean by that? It could be a professionally produced, great, or if you've got somebody in your church who can make a video of some kind, maybe it's a video of a mission trip, a video of the after-school program, a video of just daily ministry going on, a video of people worshiping on Sunday morning. So people respond to audio-visual when they see their money being used for kingdom purposes. Doesn't have to be a professionally produced video, right? A lot of people will say, oh, man, we don't have the resources for that. Hey, it can literally just be a slide. It can literally be a pamphlet that you hand them when they walk in on a Sunday morning that's just a drawing, a graphic, anything. I'm just saying that people engage through audio-visual. That's another channel. So up front, one channel, right? Giving talks, sermons. Email, text is another channel you could use. Direct mail, snail mail, it's another great channel you can use. Audio-visual, it's another channel you can use. I mentioned it earlier. Testimonials, right? Testimonials is another channel. Testimonial is very effective because it's not a church leader, and not that church leaders aren't effective, but sometimes that third voice, that third party testimonial can have a huge impact, right? Because you might have people that can actually see and hear with their own eyes somebody who has actually been impacted by the finances that have come in, right? So to use the illustration of an after-school program, you have a mom whose child attends that, and it's had a profound impact on their life, and you just get, doesn't have to be anything elaborate. You just get the mom shared 1 minute on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night or whatever about the impact on her family. That is a way that you are communicating to donors that their financial tithes and offerings are impacting the community, the missions going out. So here's the thing, you have to communicate through multiple channels. When I list those off, doesn't mean you got to do all of them every Sunday, right? Typically, when I coach churches through this, sometimes we see where churches will just start, they're sending an email and a direct mail, and they're giving talk, and they've got a slide on a Sunday, and all of a sudden they're hitting people with 4 channels on one Sunday. That's not what we mean. What we mean is, if we're going to communicate through seasons, right? So 5 seasons of generosity, if you will, as we like to say. Well, throughout those seasons, so let's take the fall, instead of feeling the pressure of only talking about finances from up front, once or twice a year, you can spread out the communication about giving through different channels. So one week it's a giving talk. The next week you've got a slide. The week after that an email goes out. The week after that there is a testimony. The week after that a direct mail piece goes out, right? You can spread out your communication through different channels. Here's a little side note that I'll give you. The less you talk about money, the more awkward it is, right? The less you talk about it, the more awkward it is. What do church leaders say? They always say to us, well, we never talk about money. But when we do, once a year, it's so awkward. Why is it so awkward if we never talk about it? It's awkward because you don't talk about it. That's why it's so awkward. You only talk about it once or twice a year. The more you talk about money through different channels, the more you will create a culture, a financial culture, where people are in tune and don't feel like this is this part of their life that's off limits. And when I say the more you talk about it, the more normal it will be, it doesn't mean that you're talking about it too much, right? Because the number one question we'll get is, well, hold on a minute. If we're going to do all these channels, people are going to think we're always only talking about money. No, not if you communicate to them about seasonal initiatives, right? That's why season's so important. Remember, you're not talking about money for money. You're talking about, here's why we need your money. It's for these purposes. So when you tie a communication to a season, people don't think that you're just talking about money because you want more of it, right? So secret number 2, you have to implement your seasonal strategy through different channels, okay? You have to get your church team together, get your leadership team, say, hey, we're going to focus on a seasonal strategy here. The way we're going to focus on a seasonal strategy is we're going to talk to our donors, we're going to communicate through 4 different channels, whatever you think is best, and here's the schedule. We're going to put it on the calendar. The surviving church only talks about money from one place, up front. That's it, which creates a lot of pressure. I mean, who wants the pressure of being the only place that you talk about money? Put a 1 in the chat box if you've ever felt the pressure of being the guy or the woman who is the only one who talks about money, and the only place you talk about money is from up front. I mean, talk about a really difficult place for anybody to be. The surviving church only talks about money from up front. They might say they talk about money through other channels, but all they mean is they send out a yearly giving statement and a letter of thanks. That's not what I'm talking about, all right? The thriving church has a seasonal strategy where it's not just one person who has to communicate about it from one place up front. They've got a multi-pronged strategy. They're communicating not too much, but they're communicating consistently. It's not about too much or too little. It's about consistency. And they're communicating consistently through different channels, because not everybody responds to somebody talking from up front. Not everybody responds to an email. Not everybody responds to just an audio visual. People are going to respond to different things. That's why it's so crucial that you engage holistically all your people in your church through different channels. That is the model that the thriving financial church is going to follow. It is a healthy dose, right? I always use this analogy when it comes to finances. Listen, sometimes it's a feast, right? Sometimes God moves on their heart and generosity is just unbelievable. Sometimes it's famine. But if you can establish a culture and a pattern of just a healthy breakfast, not a feast, not a famine, but a healthy breakfast, 52 weeks a year, you will thrive. You will beat your budget, okay? Get out of feast or famine mode. Get out of that mode and get into process, get into seasonal strategy, get into multiple forms of communication, actually implementing, and you will move from survival mode to thriving mode. Last secret I'll cover, and that is what we call the 5P future. What do I mean? Well, what I mean is that, and we work with a lot of church leaders in our different coaching programs, and it's one thing to develop a seasonal strategy, one thing to create a communication strategy, but you have to sustain it, okay? You have to have a long-term trajectory. And when I say 5P, I mean there's 5 types of people, Okay, the P stands for people. There's 5 types of people that need to be involved in this endeavor. And I'm going to say something that might be controversial, and that's okay. We can talk about it in the Q&A. And that is, typically your finance team is comprised or controlled or directed, heavily influenced by the finance person, quote unquote, okay? Which typically in a church is usually like a banker, a CPA, somebody who's financially inclined. And they're the ones that are either have control or they have the most influence. I'm going to tell you why that's a bad idea. Okay? I'm going to just say that again. That's a bad idea. You want to have different types of people involved in the financial direction of your church. Here's the types of people that you need to have, and then I'll tell you why you don't just want to have one person. You need to have 5 different types of people. Number 1, you need to have an organizer. Okay, an organizer, or I call them air traffic control. This is the person who is willing to take the multiple channels of communication by the horns and put it on a calendar. This is the person who says, hey, I will design the communication calendar. We're going to send an email this Sunday night. Next Sunday, we're going to have a slide. The Sunday after that, we're going to have a testimonial. It's an air traffic organizer. It's a controller who is willing to actually line up the communication. All right? You also need a communicator on your team. It's another type of person. You need other communicators besides you. The impact it will have if you have somebody else besides yourself up front talking about money is never ending. If you can get another person to do a giving talk, if you can get another person to stand up and talk about a certain initiative, a certain mission that you have going on, so that it's not just you, whether you're a lead pastor, whether you're a finance pastor, if you can get other communicators involved in communicating from up front about money, it will do wonders, right? It will do wonders. So you need an organizer, you need other communicators, you need members, all right? You just need members on your financial team. What do I mean? I mean people who aren't money people, they're not finance people. Doesn't matter if they're rich or poor. You need members so that they can tell you, hey, this is what I'm hearing from the pew on Sunday morning, or from the chairs, right? Whatever your context is. So often, church finances, the decisions and the communications are made in a vacuum, and you've got a group of 4 or 5 people, or just 1 or 2 people, whatever it is, and they're driving the financial bus and they're communicating, and you've got the other 95% of the people there on a Sunday morning who don't get it. It's not clear. They're not clear on where the money's going. They're not clear on what the seasonal initiatives are. And you might think you're communicating one thing, but actually you're communicating nothing, or you're communicating something different. So it's important that I call these people moles, right? These are the people that are planted, and I use that kind of in fun. They're planted in your congregation, in your church, so that they can say, hey, here's what I'm actually hearing. And you can bounce things off of them. Hey, we need to make this announcement. We have a mission trip coming up. Here's our communication strategy for it. How does this sound to you? How is this going to come across, right? So that you actually have somebody you can bounce something off of. So you need an organizer. You need other communicators. You need members. You do need numbers people, okay, so I'm clear. You do need people who understand finances, people who are good with the dollars and cents. They're good with budgeting. They can create a budget. They can read a budget. They can update people on a budget. Financial people. My recommendation to you when it comes to the financial people on your team is that you take into consideration their financial experience relative to the church's mission. Here's what I mean. If you're a 300-person church and your financial leader is a person who is the CFO of a $100 million company, they're going to take $100 million company principles and try to run a 300-person church financial budget like a $100 million company, something that I see a lot. You've got a key financial figure with great financial experience. It's not a knock on their experience. The problem is the church is not a $100 million company, Fortune 100, right? It's a church. And so my recommendation to you when it comes to the financial numbers people on your team that will help you carry out the seasonal strategy and ensure a future of beating budget is that maybe their experience and their input is proportionate to where you're actually at in the church, right? So you need an organizer, you need other communicators, you need members, You need numbers people. And then lastly, you need dreamers on your financial team. Dreamers. What do I mean by that? You need people who will constantly be pushing the team and the church forward in getting more money for more ministry. I mentioned a few minutes ago, and it might rub some people the wrong way, and I'm okay with that. That you don't need one person running the church finances who is a CPA, CFO, on and on, fill in the blank, who is managing the church budget and the church finances with that mentality, and who is only wanting to save, retract, cut budget, cut, right? Here's the problem with that mentality. That's not what God has called us to. That's the primary problem with that mentality. God has called us to go out, to expand, to reach more people, to make disciples, to go out, expansion. That's what God's kingdom is about. It's about expansion, not retraction. And so the problem I see when churches have these very strong financial figures who, oh, well, Steve, Sally, they're the numbers person, they're the numbers expert. Be careful, right? If all they talk about is cutting, and you're just a few hundred-person church, and they're cutting the budget like you're Macy's, that's a problem. You need a dreamer on your team, on your financial team, who's willing to push the envelope and say, hey, wait a minute, we're supposed to go forward. Let's dream big dreams. Let's reach more countries. Let's launch more missionaries. Let's plant more churches. Let's give more in benevolence. How can we give more? How can we reach out further? And you need that balance, right? Because too many churches take this slash and cut mentality. Well, we'll save our way to more ministry. Not going to happen. Okay, so I'm really clear. You cannot save and cut your way to more money for more ministry. It just literally won't happen. And again, you can over-spiritualize all day long and hope God drops $1 million check out of the sky, and He might. But what I'm telling you is that for the future of the church, the future of the financial landscape of the church, you need systems and processes in place that will set you up for long-term budget-beating growth as the church. So in review, these 3 secrets, and I want to make sure I break them down, make sure that I'm clear, and then we'll do some Q&A here, and then we'll finish up in a few minutes. The 5S strategy is secret number 1. Get out of a 36-month, 5-year financial world takeover plan. Get out of that extreme. Get out of the survive, run and gun, Wild West, wow, we don't have money, let's ask for it. Get out of those 2 extremes and communicate seasonally. Break it down into smaller, manageable chunks: fall, winter, holiday, spring, summer. So you have that strategy in place, implement the strategy. How will you implement the strategy? You will communicate through different channels, what I call the 5 C's, 5 different channels. You will communicate through different channels throughout that season. You'll spread it out. Up front, there's giving talks, there's sermons, emails, maybe it's a letter, audio, visual, slide, testimonial, etc. And then lastly, the future, you've got your strategy, you've got implementation. How do you sustain it? Well, you need 5 different types of people to carry this ball forward so that you're not the only person talking about money, and the only place you talk about it is from up front. You don't need that pressure. You shouldn't have that pressure. You should spread out the leadership across different types of people. You need an organizer on your team. You need communicators on your team so somebody else can talk about money besides you. You need members on your team, right? The moles, as I call them, who can tell you what they're hearing. You need a numbers person on your team, maybe more than one for sure. And you need dreamers on your team who are going to tell you to go expand, go beyond, let's go bigger, let's dream bigger and go farther. The surviving church is a church who only has one type of person on their financial team. And this person makes all the decisions. They really are the key influencer. And typically it's a person who says, well, wait a minute, I'm a whatever, and I know money. That's fine. That's great. We're glad you're on the team. We need other people. The surviving church is very limited in its scope and its focus. The thriving church is a church who has invited lots of different types of people on their financial team. They don't make a prerequisite for financial leadership in the church where you've got to actually be certified Dave Ramsey coach financial expert. They just want people who care about getting more money for more ministry, right? I get asked all the time, what should be the requirement for somebody who wants to be on the financial team? Somebody who understands that you need money to do more ministry. It's really that simple, and they're willing to help participate in getting that money to go do more ministry. The thriving church has different types of people on their team carrying the ball forward, creating a future of thriving where you're not surviving. Here's something Alan Summers said, one of our partners. One of the things that Giving Rocket did, our principles that we teach, is it created a year-long schedule. Schedule is it's just so crucial. Like if you have a schedule of communication, right? And what he means is they broke it up by season, but they had a schedule they were following, which means, well, you know what a schedule means? It means calendar. It means you know what you're going to be doing at a specific time as it pertains to church communication about money. Let's do some Q&A. All right, continue with a little bit of other content here, and I've got the State of the End also. I'm going to tell you how to get more money this Sunday. So Haley, talk to me. Give me some questions here.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. We've had some great questions come in, so you guys keep them coming if you have more that come to mind. But we'll start with Hezekiah, and he asked, how can my church stop depending on special campaigns to make up for budget shortfall?
Yeah, great question. Well, one is I would just say, hey, we're not going to do any more campaigns until we've got an actual strategy in place, because a campaign isn't a long-term strategy, right? Campaign means you're on a campaign, and the campaign has an end date at some point. And the problem is, because churches don't have systems, that's why they rely on campaigns and programs and fundraisers, is because they don't have a strategy. Right, and they may not want to admit that, but that's ultimately why churches stay in fundraising mode for so long, and they never intend to, right? That's the thing about fundraising and campaigning. Churches don't plan to stay there, but what happens is they get dependent on it, and again, they don't have any kind of bedrock. There's no calendar, there's no schedule that they're following, and when the campaign's over, what do you got to do? You got to go start another campaign. You don't have anything. You don't have any other plans, and so I would just say, you know, if possible, just saying, hey, no more campaigns until we've got a strategy that we're following that includes regular donor communication. Here's the thing about campaigns everybody needs to understand. They have their place. They're fine. As I mentioned earlier, I think at least once. I'm not knocking them. Capital expenses come up. But your people can't be expected to just stop and go with campaigns as donors. It's really unreasonable and unhealthy to keep your donors in a stop-and-go, one campaign to the next for a long period of time. Number one, that's not a good model for how they should be managing their own financial life, okay? And then number two, it's just not responsible to expect your people to go, oh, you know, you don't have to give a lot, you don't have to give a lot. Hey, we need a ton of money. You don't have to give a lot, you don't have to give a lot. Hey, we need a lot of money. That's not good for them. And it's also going to create eventually burnout, right? Ultimately, churches will say, why aren't people giving? And it's just like because you wore them out, you know, with too many campaigns. So that's my recommendation. Hope that helps. What else we got, Haley?
Yeah. Are there any seasons that you should just expect a drought in giving?
Great question. I mean, yeah, totally. Summer is the hardest, right? When we talk to churches, that's one of the things they hear. Summer is when people are on vacation. They're out of their rhythms. You know, school's not, you know, in the swing of things, typically depending on where you're located, obviously. And so I would say, yeah, I think summer's definitely the hardest. Go ahead and put a 1 in the chat box if summer's the hardest for you. Let's just see if anybody agrees. I know that's what we hear. And so I would say it is, which I think is all the reason more why you need to have a multi-pronged communication strategy. Do you think people check their email and text messages when they're at the beach in the summer? You bet they do. Absolutely. Which is why you need to have digital giving, so that when somebody's on vacation, they still have a chance to give, which is why you need to teach recurring donations, right, so that they don't have to worry about it. They've set it and forget it, as we like to say. They've automated the important. We have a whole module on this, but they've set it and forget it, and so even though they're traveling or whatever, you know, the donation's still going to be made. So summer is the hardest. Communication is absolutely the most important thing, and then I think prepping people, communicating. Here's the crazy thing, and I said this earlier, okay? The less you talk about money, the more awkward it is, right? And you just got to get that in your head. If you talk about it more, it'll be less awkward. And so why won't you just say to your people, hey, I know summer's coming up. Okay, school just let out. I know for like the next 3 months, people have things going on. We get it. Have a great vacation. Have a great, you know, summer together. But we still need your money this summer. Again, remember, seasonal communication, because this summer, here's the 3 ministry initiatives we have going on this summer. We've got a youth mission trip, we've got a new children's pastor coming on. We've got this going on. So we still need your money this summer, right? And I'll say it joking to the congregation. Hey, don't forget, we still need your money this summer because of this, because of this, because of this. So please make plans to give if you're going to be out of town, and we're going to provide you with the means to do so and some reminders. We know how busy you stay. So I hope that helps. What else we got, Haley?
Yeah, this is from Rob and from Jet, and they asked, is there a good strategy to specifically engage newer members in giving?
Sure, yeah. There's different things you can do. I think one of the key things, and some of this will just be my experience, so I'm sure churches have lots of great ideas. If you do, please put it in the chat box if you've got something that's worked with new people. I know for me, in our culture today, in the church that I attend, we make it really explicit that if you're new here, you're brand new, we're not asking for your money today, and I love that. Because there's people are skeptical sometimes of churches, church leaders, and money, right? Maybe stuff they've seen on TV. People are just asking for money all the time. And so we try to make it a point that, hey, if you're new here, like, we're not asking for your money today, and we actually say that. We're just hope that you enjoy that this service, this time is a blessing to you. If we can encourage you in any way, pray for you, etc. So I love that practice. So it kind of lets them know that, number one, you're okay to talk about money. Number two, you're not hitting them up for money. They just walked in the doors. So I would say that. And then I just think your regular communication from up front at your giving plate and your slides, and again, tying it to a season, will help guests know that, number one, you need money, and number two, that there's different things going on. Again, another benefit to communicating with a seasonal strategy is that visitors, when you say, hey, it's summer, we've got this and this and this going on, a visitor can immediately see what you're doing, the ministries you're involved in, how you're impacting the community, which obviously is a great benefit because they're going to say, hey, I could see myself volunteering there. That's really cool. So that'd be my recommendation there. Again, going back to seasonal strategy. Let's do one more, Haley, and then we'll cover a few more items, and we'll do some more Q&A though.
Yeah, here's one. They asked, do you recommend sending out a quarterly email to your church members with an update in finances?
Yes. Definitely. It doesn't have to be every quarter. I mean, I think that can vary depending on, depending on your church and how you want to do it. I think what I would say is that when I talk about communicating through, the 5 C's, different channels, 5 different types of channels or whatever, and seasonally, I don't mean that every communication is a budget update, okay? Budget updates are boring. I just tell you, they're boring. Do people care about them? Yes, but they're boring. What people really get excited about are ministry initiatives. They get excited about who you're reaching, how you're reaching people, how they can be involved. Here's how your money's being used. So my answer is I definitely think you need to update them on the budget. I think it's fiscally responsible. I think your members need to know that the money is being managed properly. But just remember that they're not going to be motivated to give more because you tell them that you have a shortfall, right? I think that's the danger with budgets, is churches assume if I share the budget and they see we don't have enough money, they're going to give more. Not going to happen. Don't assume that, okay? The opposite might happen. They go, well, if they can't manage money, why would I give them any more? Okay? So you got to be really careful how you communicate budget and make sure it's not your focal point all the time, and make sure you're not trying to implicitly communicate that you need more money by sending out budgets and that kind of stuff. So I hope that really helps. Hey, here's one thing I always tell churches: more giving means more ministry. You're here, and kudos to you for being here, because you want to do more. You want more stability for your church. You want to reach more people with the gospel, and it takes more money. It takes more giving to do so. And I would absolutely love to spend another 3-4 hours with you, but we can't cover everything we need in a webinar. And if today has been helpful, put a 1 in the chat box. But what the Rocket Company has put together is an actual offer so that you can get everything that you need, because you need a financial team that is meeting on a regular basis, acting on these initiatives, because a 1-hour webinar is not going to be enough for you to go and change the game, financially speaking, for your church. So we've put together an offer. We've even got a deal for you. Old habits die hard. What I tell every church leader is that you will not, from a 1-hour webinar, go and change the financial landscape of your church. You need a system that you can actually lean on, a framework. You need resources and documents and agendas and budgets and calendars and all this kind of stuff. and you don't go back to doing the same thing, is what I'm saying. A lot of church leaders will just continue in survivor mode. It takes action, hard work, implementation, and so you're going to be excited that the Rocket Company actually has something that you can lean on. It can be your framework. It can be as if me or all the other leaders that you see in our coaching programs are at your church on site, as it were, teaching you, coaching you, encouraging you on in your financial journey. So the Giving Rocket is what we have to offer you today. The Giving Rocket is a 12-month coaching program. It's designed to increase giving at your church. It's a repeatable system. Okay, it's designed by pastors, for pastors, and here's what each module includes. It includes coaching videos. It's got guides that go with the coaching videos. It's got actual ebooks that go with it. You can take it with you on the go. You can send it out to your financial team, your deacons, your elders, your board, so that they can actually be listening and following along. People can listen to it on their commute, right? Here's what the modules look like. When I say 12 coaching modules, I just mean once a month. Let's just pretend I've come to your church and I'm going to take you through a financial coaching module. That is literally what the Giving Rocket is, okay? Each module is going to have videos, it's going to have reading, it's going to have community, it's going to have action steps such as a financial funding plan. So you have an actual 12-month plan. Creating a plan to actually get money, okay? So it's not enough to have a plan. You got to have a step-by-step action list, and you got to have your organizer, as I mentioned, on your team helping you execute. How to get people to give, how to communicate to each type of giver, all right? Maybe you haven't thought about that. There's actually different types of givers in your church, and there's a way that you can communicate to those different types so that they will actually give. Module 4, the #1 way to get more money for more ministry. So basically what we're saying is, hey, we've surveyed thousands of churches the past decade. We're going to give you what we've learned. Module 5, Giving Made Easy. We're going to give you tools to attract new types of givers, right? So you have a church of people that are happy to give their money for the sake of the mission. Module 7, how to attract high-impact givers, right? How to disciple high-impact givers without manipulating them to give, okay? We've got a whole module on that with coaching videos and worksheets and things along those lines. Module 8, 3 Sundays that will revolutionize your bank account, right? So we do know that at times you can have these surges, an increase in total giving, and so we've got communication packets, we've got coaching to pull off those types of things. Helping your congregation win financially, so we actually have a personal financial training system for people in your church. We talk about spending, debt, saving, giving. Module 10, how to preach on money, how to do it well, right? Something that you need to be doing is not just preaching one sermon per year, but actually have series that you go through and messages that you teach where you talk about money, so we've got that. Building the best board and finance team, right? So we talk about how to recruit those people. So it's not just bankers and accountants, as I mentioned. And then Module 12, Church Budgeting Made Simple. Those are the modules. Here's what you're going to get with the Giving Rocket. You're going to get these unlimited access to our resource vault that is filled with budgets and templates and forms and documents and packets. You get MP3s, ebooks, you get listening guides, you get done-for-you resources, you get a members community. This is one of my favorite things about the Giving Rocket and about what the Rocket Company has done over the years is we've built a group of leaders who are all raising their hand and saying, I'm going to commit to working on this, and I'd love to be in communication with other church leaders doing the same thing I am, the same struggles. We can share our victories, so that's exactly what we do with our Community Members Forum. A $2,100 value, okay? And what we mean by that really specifically is that if you had a church financing consulting team come to your church every month for a year and coach you, give you resources, give you action step by step, and they came back and did it the next month, that's what it would cost. It'd actually be a whole lot more, and you know that if you know what that's like. That's exactly what the Giving Rocket is. Here's who this has worked for. You say, hey, am I a good fit for this? I got all types of church leaders, all types of church sizes. The financial issues churches struggle with are all just about the same no matter what the size is typically. Churches that are already doing well financially, if you're doing great financially and you just say, hey, I just want to make sure that we were on a trajectory to be doing well for 30 years. It is all about systems. Or maybe you're a church that's about to close the doors and you're like, hey, we need a lifeline. And I'm telling you, your lifeline is an actual system. This is the kind of impact that the Giving Rocket will have, okay? Bill, one of our church partners, had a board meeting last night. They went through module 1 of the Giving Rocket. Had a board meeting, turned on the coaching program. They watched it. They talk about it. They've got hope for the future again. That's what we're talking about. So where you're not the only person talks about money from one place, right? You can actually point your team, your board, to a group of resources, and everybody's on the same page. Over $2,100 of value within the Giving Rocket, and today we're going to throw in some bonus resources that we have so that you can just get more for being here, attending this webinar. Bonus number 1, we've got something called Automate the Important. Right, when I mentioned recurring donations, a lot of churches are like, man, I would love to have recurring donations. You might even be a church that says, hey, we've got digital donations. I know, how much is recurring though, right? Sometimes a digital one-time donation is no different than a one-time check. You need to teach automation. So we've got an entire module, an entire coaching program, $297 value. The first 30 church leaders that sign up today, they get it absolutely free. Also, we've got the offering time system as well, an actual system for your offering plate talks, okay? A lot of church leaders, I don't know what to do. I constantly feel like I need to reinvent the wheel. It's become mundane. Nobody's really benefiting from it. We just do it to do it. You need something that you can actually follow. So we have an offering time system that we're also going to include today, absolutely free to the first 20 church leaders who sign up. Over $2,500 of value that we're offering today with the Giving Rocket. And here's what I ask church leaders, okay? If a system, a financial system like the Giving Rocket, if all it did was take your church from surviving to thriving, would it be worth it? If all it did was help you feel like you have to stop reinventing the wheel every Sunday, right? Which is what leads to survivor mode, by the way, okay? What leads to survivor mode is, let me just come up with something to say because we need more money. That's what actually leads to long-term perpetual survival mode. If all it did was get you out of that, so you could actually stop feeling that pressure and actually feel like, hey, we've got a financial plan. I can focus on doing what I'm supposed to be doing and not worrying about money. If all it did was give you pre-done resources to communicate to donors, just so I'm really clear, a lot of churches, their knee-jerk reaction when they see the 5 C's, 5 different channels, communication, they go, man, we'll never, ever accomplish that. We know, we get it. That's why the Giving Rocket actually includes pre-done giving talks, pre-done emails. These are resources that are done for you, copy and paste. They are ready to go. We just need you to fire them off. We have all of these resources included. I mean, what's a 25 to 50% increase in church funding actually worth to you? What would that do? Would it provide more stability in your church budget? Would it allow you to have more resources to reach more people? When we talk about actual coaching, which is exactly what this is, you can see why it's worth $2,500 all day long. You can see why it's $997 for church leaders that typically buy it right off of our website from our promotions. But today only, because you're here, you can get started with the Giving Rocket for $79 a month. $79 a month at givingrocketoffer.com. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to givingrocketoffer.com. Kelly's going to put it in the actual chat stream. I want you to go there, and I want you to just commit to taking 1 minute to looking at the modules, okay? Look at the modules and ask yourself, would these modules have an impact for me? Would these modules actually help us with where we're at? Because here's the thing. Most churches have never invested a penny in an actual financial coaching plan they can follow and implement, okay? They don't invest money on it. That's what's ironic. And then they don't have money, right? $50 a Sunday, which is what this comes out to. You can have a church financial plan that you're following that has coaching, videos, audio, books, community that you and your team can go through together for $79 a month. I'm just challenging you today that the only way to go from surviving financially speaking as a church to thriving as a church, the only bridge is putting systems in place. Just period. We interact with 10,000 plus churches that have tried it all. We've seen it all. We've heard it all. A system like the Giving Rocket is the only bridge between survival mode and actually thriving for the long term. And you need a system to put in place. You've got 2 choices, which is just keep surviving, right? Or you can actually invest in what's absolutely critical to your church carrying out their mission, right? If you don't have money, you can't do mission like you want to, like you ought to. You need more money for more ministry. If you are not investing to create systems and put action items in place, implementation, so that you can go out and do more ministry, it's going to be a challenge. You're going to struggle and be frustrated. Here's an example of what I mean, okay? Dale Schaefer. Just read this. We usually average around $6,500 per week in our offering. Our previous highest regular offering was $8,900. This past Sunday, with no special giving emphasis, we received $13,000 in an undesignated giving. I think it's safe to say, I wish we'd purchased Giving Rocket months ago. The giving talks alone, with a little local creativity, are worth the price of the program. No special giving emphasis. Guys, what's happening here? When Dale says this, he's got a system in place where he's not relying, as somebody asked the question earlier, on special, we have a campaign, we need this. No, it's just systems. It's communication. He mentioned specifically giving talks. Kenny Davis, it's shown us how to connect with our church and emphasize the importance of giving in ways we never would have thought of before. Remember, I mentioned, if you're only talking about giving from one place up front, you are not connecting with most people in your church. If you're only about giving, you are missing a lot of people, the majority of people. Kenny says, hey, with the Giving Rocket, they gave us actual resources and ways to engage people that we never have before. That's what you need to be doing. That's what I said the 5 C's are all about. If you're not signing up, here's why church leaders don't invest in financial systems. Number one, you don't understand the cost of inaction. What I mean by that is, if you're a church who's in survival mode, slash, cut, retract, pull in, you don't understand how much you're missing in donations on an annual basis. The cost of inaction, not doing anything, is far greater than saving a little bit of money, which is what most churches try to do. Save their way, slash and cut their way to more ministry. Not how it works. Not going to happen. Number two, you don't understand what it could do for you in terms of return on investment. In other words, if you didn't just retract, but you actually put a system in place, just imagine, and if you go to therockcompany.com, go to givingrocketoffer.com, we've got study after study, we've got testimonial after testimonial of church leaders who will say they experienced 20, 30, 40. We have some that experience 50% year over year increases in total giving as a result, direct result of the Giving Rocket system. What would a 20%, just be really conservative, what would a 20, a 15% year over year annual increase do for your church? And then number three, a lot of churches are they're afraid of key leaders who are driving the financial direction. Just bottom line, they've got one key figure who runs the whole ship. And my challenge to you is you cannot let one person, one key influencer, decide the financial landscape for your church. You need to make it a team effort. I want you to go to givingrocketoffer.com. I want you to just spend 2 minutes. I want you to look over the modules, and I want you to say, hey, is it worth $20 a Sunday for us to have pre-done communication resources with a coach for a 12-month period? Is it going to repay itself and go 10x, 20x beyond the investment that you will make? Everything that you're going to get listed here and on the actual site, $2,500. Here's an example a church leader tweeted out recently, watching one of the coaching videos. You can see the kind of experience that you'll have. $79 a month today only, just so we're really clear. $79 a month today only, givingrocketoffer.com. It will be $9.97 or more beyond today. Let's do some more Q&A. Haley, one of my favorite parts is just seeing what people are thinking, what they're asking about how to beat their budget year after year. So let's go with a few more questions.
Yeah, this is another one from Hezekiah, and he says, we're a sending church, so our members that are going overseas have to raise their money individually. So how do we increase budget giving without hurting those that are raising money for missions?
That is a great question. You know, that's tough to answer because there's not a real quick and easy thing to say, because first off, it's awesome you're a sending church, right? Like, high five from me and everybody else on the webinar. Fantastic that you're a sending church. Sometimes I notice that churches that are sending churches are constantly, for lack of better words, battling, right, the need to raise money to send people out and their own church budget. And my challenge to you would just be, you have to make sure that you have a regular communication pattern that is just about your church itself. And you need to be clear that if you don't actually have that, you can't send anybody, right? You can't be a sending church. You can't send more people unless your church is on a solid footing. Otherwise, you're just going to turn into a broker, right, who's just kind of the middle person to send out more people. And so my challenge to you is to make sure that you have a regular communication pattern with your members. It's not about sending. It's about your local church. It's about who you are, what you're doing, and make sure they understand that you can't be a sending church unless you are on solid footing as a church together. Great question. What else we got, Haley?
Yeah, so you were talking about using multiple channels to communicate with your congregation about giving. Do you think that the other channels are ever as effective as an appeal from the pulpit?
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. And it's not because you're not effective from the pulpit, just so I'm really clear, okay? I'm not saying that it's because, you're not doing it, you're not clear enough, you're not whatever. All I'm saying is that, we have this idea that everybody responds the same way, that everybody thinks like we do. And the bottom line is people respond to different things, right? There's people who respond to written form, and they struggle to listen to somebody talk for a long time. They struggle to engage. We have people that respond to audiovisual. They see a picture of somebody on a mission trip. They see a picture of the after-school program, and that moves them. And so it's just all about, people are different, right? It's the cool thing about the church is that it's not about uniformity, right? It's about unity, and not everybody's the same. And so what that means in terms of your communication is you can engage people through different channels. And so my answer is yes. I think other channels are as effective or more effective for different types of people as upfront, just because people respond to different things. It's that simple. And think about the way we're living our lives. People spend 99% of their communication time on their email, on their phone, and via text, and the amount that they're in church, on an annual, weekly basis is actually very, very small. And so when you're only dependent on that one moment, you're basically saying, hey, this, 2-minute giving talk, this sermon is going to trump the actual, other time they're spending in all these different channels, which it's not. It's just not going to. So good question. Different types of channels is absolutely critical communicating to your donors. What else we got?
All right, so what are your thoughts on having something like a special dinner for your top donors? Is that showing favoritism?
That's a great question. My answer is, it showing favoritism? It could be, but it doesn't have to be, right? I don't think that's the immediate implement. For some reason that word is escaping me today. I don't think that's what it means. I think that recognizing people who have a high impact on your donations is a great thing to do, because people have different gifts in the church, right? Like Ephesians says, God gave different types of gifts. And so some people, their gift that God has given them is the ability to earn money. And so their responsibility, the way they serve, is through high impact giving. And so I think that it can be a great way to engage those people. I obviously wouldn't make a big deal out of it and advertise it and pick them up in a limo, right? You get what I'm saying? But I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't think it necessarily shows favoritism. It could be. I think my challenge to you would be make sure that you don't rely on high impact givers over and against regular donor communication, because that will be critical. I think sometimes churches can begin to just rely on, a group of 5 to 10 or however big your church is, of the high impact givers. It's like, well, Bob and Sally will make up the difference. So you don't want to get into that, right? So I would just say make sure you're putting in just as much and more effort into communicating to the rest of the donor base, because that's going to be your base of people for the long haul. Great question. Hey, listen, I want to respect everybody's time. $79 a month today, you can get access everything that we're talking about, okay? Every question that's been answered, there's entire coaching modules on these topics, and not just coaching modules. There's resources that I can't put in your hands right this second. There are resources that go with the modules, and there are other church leaders going through the same modules. So I'm really clear. Go to givingrocketoffer.com, look through the modules, and just recognize all the stuff we've talked about today. There are entire coaching sessions with resources and community on all these specific topics. Now, I said at the beginning, if you stay to the end, I'm going to give you one way to get more money this Sunday, all right? And here it is. You're going to communicate to your people that you are going to communicate about money more effectively. Say it again. You're going to communicate to your people from up front that you're going to communicate about money more effectively. You're going to just put it on their radar that you need money for ministry, and you're going to highlight specific ministries as you head toward the fall. So you can almost, in effect, start your fall seasonal strategy. If you go to givingrocketoffer.com and actually enroll in our coaching program, you can literally apply the fall strategy. But you're going to tell them, hey, we haven't been as clear as we need to be and we want to be about finances, but we need your money. We're going to talk about money more often so it's less awkward. And what we mean by that is we need your money this fall for these 3 initiatives. All right? And just so I'm clear, it doesn't mean that you have to have some big spectacular initiative, right? One initiative can be, hey, we'd actually like to beat our budget this fall, right? Don't forget, your people want you to beat budget. And so it's a great thing to tell them, hey, we need you to give regularly because we actually want to go beyond just paying for the lights in the building. We want to actually go far beyond that. And so that is the way to get money this Sunday, get more money, is to tell your people, begin a pattern of communication and put it on the radar that you are going to engage them in more financial conversations through more purposeful ways. So I hope that helps. Put a 1 in the chat box if this has been a time that you have benefited from. And go to givingrocketoffer.com. Take a look at the modules, the testimonials. Today, only $79 a month you can get started with the Giving Rocket. My name is Sam Hill. I'm a team leader with the Rocket Company. The Rocket Company exists to equip you, provide you with tools and resources and coaching so that you can go far beyond where you ever thought you could. You would actually enjoy ministry, and you would beat your budget year after year after year. Thank you for your valuable time being here. We will see you on our next training very shortly.